Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Kuldeep Jain, and I welcome you all on behalf of this Fertility Science and Research, which is the official journal of Indian Fertility Society. And we are having this program for quite some time, and the purpose of this program is to help the researchers to solve their problem when they are planning to write or planning to publish a paper in any journal. They are having a lot of questions, so it is very nice to have Professor Gadis, Dr. Yusuf, Dr. Jayant Mehta, and whole team of experts who is there to help you out. And uh, this is a very interactive program which Professor Gaddis has designed, and I am really hopeful that this one-to-one interaction will be really helpful in solving your problems as far as the publication of your research articles are concerned. I welcome Dr. Kalpana Singh, who has uh, come forward. She is the Secretary SIG Bihar, and uh, she has really extended all help in organizing this workshop for young researchers. So thank you everyone, and I hand over mic to Dr. Jayant and Professor Gaddis.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure for us to be here with you this afternoon. We have two eminent speakers with us who are going to educate us and explain to us what we should not be doing and what we should be looking into. Before wasting any further time, I would like to invite Dr. Professor Kalpana Singh to start the program this afternoon. We will if any questions that you have, please send it in the chat box and we'll try and answer those as we go along. Or at the end of the talk, we can sort of have a brief discussion followed by a panel discussion, which is going to be after Dr. Yusuf's talk. Apart from that, it is an interactive session, and I'm sure that when we want to when you have any question, doesn't matter how naive it may sound to you, please feel free to come forward. This is your platform to learn from us, from whatever we can teach you, and we can move forward. I would now like to invite Professor Gaidis to just say a few words before we invite Professor Kalpana to say deliver her talk. Professor Gaddis.
Colleagues, welcome. We have two very important speakers with us today. Since we have to keep to time, apart from my few words of welcome, which I've now finished, it's time to start. Thank you.
Professor Kalpana, would you,
Yes.
Floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So is my screen visible?
It is.
First slide is okay, sir?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
So I'll be starting.
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to express my thanks for giving me this opportunity to the organizers, especially to Pankaj Talwar sir, Kuldeep sir, and all those who are involved in organizing this CME. Thank you very much. So I'll be basically limiting my talk to the basics of writing a scientific paper. Just a minute, it is causing disturbance. Yeah. So writing a paper is more difficult than operating. Actually, it is not mechanical. So to talk is easy, but to convey the same thing in written is a bit difficult. So the brain has to function more to write than to talk. So usually people don't prefer to don't prefer to write, they become more judgmental. They judge people more. Why it's not moving? Yeah. So first of all, I would like to speak about what are different types of scientific papers. So there can be original article. Here the information is based on the original research. Whenever we do any kind of research, and then after completing the research work, the work is published. So this is called original article. Sometimes case reports are also there in journals. They are usually single case. Any rare case which is very interesting and there are many learning components, then we go for publishing the case reports. So that is called case report. Then letter to editor is also a type of paper. So here it is short and it is on the subject of interest to the readers. Then there are review articles. Review articles are usually done by the senior senior professors, and they do detailed analysis of all the recent research work on specific topics. Then there can be commentary. This is a short article with author's personal opinions, and sometimes we read editorial. So editorial is often short review or critique of the original articles. So this is the example of the original research work, a structure of DNA, which was by Watson and Crick. So coming to abstract, it is usually written in the last. So abstracts, after completing everything, we write the abstract. So abstracts can vary in length from one paragraph to several pages, but they follow the IMRAD format. This IMRAD format is very important. I'll be discussing in detail about IMRAD format. So typically 25% of the space of importance is given to the introduction. So we have to introduce the topic to the readers. Then 25% of the space is given to the methods, how the things were done, and 35% of space on what was found. This is the most important part of research, that is the result. And then 15% of space is on the implication of the research, that is discussion. So will be basically the 4 components of IMRAD are introduction, why the topic was started, then methods, what did you do, then results, what was the finding, and then discussion. This is IMR, and is and then discussion D. So IMRADs, this is very important. We have to, all the students must remember that whenever we write any paper or abstract, this IMRAD sequence has to be followed in a sequential way. So coming to the introduction, how do you introduce to the topic? So first and foremost is identifying the data needs. Why any research has to be done? Whenever a research is done, there is a reason. There has to be some novelty. And so we have to find why the research has to be done. So, and then there has to be a research question. So these two are part of introduction. We have to introduce the topic in such a way that there is a need of research, and then research question is spelled out, and then in introduction only the study objectives are written. So we start by providing the reader with general background information on the topic of the paper. So general information, describe what is known about a disease, what topic or technique or whatever, why it is so relevant, why it is so important in the given context. And then gradually from the known, we come to the unknown part of the topic. What is not known in that thing? What problem is not solved? What is the knowledge gap? This is very important. Unless there is a novelty, there is something new, there is no reason to do a research or to get it published, because then readers are not interested, nobody is interested. So there has to be some area of interest, there has to be some knowledge gap which should be highlighted. Because of this only the topic of research was chosen or the paper is dealing about. Or limitation of prior studies also tells about the knowledge gap. So there can be like in example, there can be in previous papers there could be lack in the analytical techniques, or the randomization was not done properly, or the study participants were small in number. So there could be various kind of thing which signifies that there is a knowledge gap or there is a reason to go for research. So most of the time in introduction, either we propose the hypothesis, we write the or the research question, or the purpose of study is highlighted. So goal of the study should be written, objectives are written in the part of introduction. Text must provide a clear rationale why the study was initiated. The reasons for doing research as limited. Sometimes we test a hypothesis, or we answer a question, or solve a problem, or fulfill a purpose. And then whatever is our aim, accordingly, we write it. We want to hypothesize this, or we want to test this hypothesis, or we are looking for the answer to this question, etc. etc. So this is very important. Most of the time, the students get confused about the tense. So introduction is always written in present tense. It should not be written in past tense or any other. It's always written in the present tense. So, but sometimes everything is not perfect whenever we are whenever we are writing the introduction. What happens? The students keep on writing a lot about the historical details. It gets too long, very general, vague, and sometimes discussion material is also there. So that should not happen. We have to be very focused. We have to start it, and then we zoom in from the general to the specific topic, critically review what is known and what is not known, and that flags the gap in the knowledge. And it becomes very natural why study was undertaken, and we end the introduction with aims and objectives, and references should always be given. Now coming to the methods, material and methods. So what was done, how the research work was completed. So in material and methods, the everything, how the research was executed is written, and how the data were collected. These are all part of the material and methods. So in material and methods, we have to explain who were the study participants, what was done, when, where, and how. All these questions need to be answered in a detailed way. Then only material and method is accurate. So we have to answer all the questions. Usually, we can make this kind of algorithm which helps in summarizing the information and the flowchart goods. So whatever individual or groups were participating, who were all participating in the study groups, then inclusion and exclusion criteria can be mentioned, who are eligible to participate in the study and who were not eligible, so they are excluded. Then of all those who are eligible, some may give consent to the participation and some may not participate. So again, participants and non-participants, and then the treatment or control group. So this helps us in writing the material and methods. And whenever we submit the project, then material and method is written in the future tense, will be done like this and this. But whenever we go for the publication of paper, then material and methods is always written in the past tense. This was done. So this is important for all the students who have joined. So for material methods, there is a checklist. Does it describe what question was being asked, what was being tested, how reliable the measurements were, what were the parameters recorded and analyzed correctly. And this is the last one, is very important. It should be written in such a method that any reader should be able to repeat the same experiment without any other assistance. If he is able to do so, that means the material and method had been appropriately described. There is no lacunae. But if somebody is left with many questions after reading, then that material and method is not appropriately written. So the reader should be able to repeat the same experiment. That is very important. That much information is to be given in the material and methods. So coming to
Thank you, Dr. Kalpana. Sorry to disturb you. You are now 6 minutes over time.
Okay.
We are late, so perhaps you can continue after Dr. Youssef's presentation or in the general panel discussion.
So 6 minutes are there now. I'll complete.
Yeah.
No. You're already late 6 minutes. We have to get into the next presentation. Yeah.
15 minutes.
We should have started at 2 o'clock, 2:15.
I think it
2:15 to 2:30. Sorry.
So
That's okay,
Can I-
Dr. Rupali.
can
You
5
take
minutes, I'll
over.
complete
No.
5 minutes.
You, Dr. Rupali, take over. Two people are leaving. Two of the faculty are leaving exactly at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
okay. So I think you can wind it up in 5 minutes.
Shall
Dr.
I just give me 5 minutes? And within 5 minutes, I'll complete.
Yeah. Dr. Yusuf, you're all right, is it?
Yeah, that's fine. 5 minutes, that's fine.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay. So material and methods, there are certain standardized reporting guidelines are there, like concert, start, stop, prisma, moves. This should be used while writing the material and methods. So now coming to the results. So how the data is analyzed and how we have collected, these are all written in the results. The most straightforward approach is to use a chronological order with subheadings that parallels the methods and their sequence presented earlier in the paper. This order allows the readers to move easily to go back and refer the methods. So usually we follow chronological order and then grouping by topic or experiment or from general to specific. These are the ways. How do we write the result? And we have to be very particular about this thing. The data and results are not same. So we have to remember this. And then this is how a table is written. We have to give the title and then common headings, row headings, footnotes, all these should be written in an appropriate way. Graphs are usually part of data or giving the records, results. So summarize rows and column, compare the numbers in columns, arrange key data by magnitude, align the numbers by decimal. Then if there is no logical order, horizontal bar chart should be given, a logical order, vertical bar chart should be given. So this is how in results we should always recycle the methods outline, walk the reader through salient features, provide numerators and denominators, caption the information in tables and figures, describe the information in simple terms, and back up the statement with data in statement and tables. So we have already, now coming to the discussion. This is the last part of the paper writing. So in discussion, we have to give the summary of the findings without quantified results, what was found, and then what can be said, what we cannot say, that is the limitation. And in last paragraph, we give the conclusion and recommendations. So usually start by showing what exactly did the study show, what it means, how the results can be interpreted, how it is similar or dissimilar with the others' work, and what are the study strengths and weakness, what exactly happened. So, so a discussion should end with conclusion. This is again very important because it provides the what was the exact findings, the signal, the and in additional tips that we should not repeat the results, keep the discussion as short as possible, and the take-home message should be very much clear, and we should not repeat the stats repeatedly. We should not write that more research is needed unless it is very much needed. So language and writing style that will deliver the message. There are 6 S of scientific writing. That is, the paper should be simple, short, structured, sequential, strong, specific, and the common errors in English that make Indian authors in negotiating the peer review jungle should be avoided. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Kalpana, for a very detailed analysis of what we should be doing in writing the publication. As we are constrained, we have constraint of time. I'd like to now invite Dr. Yusuf to deliver his talk. Dr. Yusuf, and what we can do is take up questions during the panel time. Thank you very much. Dr. Yusuf, the floor is yours.
All right, perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the organizing committee to have me here as well. So I've been asked to give a quick talk, 10 minutes, short and sweet, about how to do a systematic review. And so I don't have any conflicts of interest that's relevant to this talk. So the point is, how do we start with an idea and get to something like this in your manuscript in terms of the first plot, your bias assessment? So I'll just talk briefly in terms of how this goes. So the importance of a systematic review is it actually gives an overview of every single study that's been out there within a specific theme. It allows us to present the data in a structured and comprehensive way so that we can have a look at the data from a bird's eye view, and allows us, more importantly, to find out where the gaps in the research is. And there are different forms of review. I'm going to focus purely on the systematic review here, which is designed to do pairwise analyses. What that means is you just allow 2 interventions to be compared to each other. There are various other ways to write 3 to 4 interventions to be compared, but from a systematic review point of view, it's just two interventions being done. And like I've said, the importance of it is it's important from a clinical point of view to drive guideline recommendation, identify gaps, and also helps with policy development as well. Most of the guidelines that's out there are focused on results from systematic reviews. So how do we start? We start with actually defining a research question. That means is what are you actually looking into it? And the way you design it is using a PICO framework, which I'm going to go through that as well. And then once you've got the idea, the question design is about the practical step. Now, how do you register your protocol? How do you do a lit review? And how do you go ahead with study selection and data extraction, which I'll go through in a moment. So if you want to put it from a practical point of view, let's just say your research question is on trigger mechanism for an IVF in patients having IVF. So your population, P stands for population, that's patients having IVF. I is your interventions, that means the different types of trigger that's out there. Comparators is whatever is relevant for your questions. And then the outcomes are, O is the outcome, what's actually of interest. Different outcomes out there, and the focus should be on the core outcome sets that was published in 2022, whereby clinical pregnancy and live birth rates are the most important things. So, so let's define a potential question here. Our question is to compare efficacy and safety of HCG versus agonist trigger in responders. So that's our PICO question. And the next step is to register the protocol. The way you register it is through Prospero. Prospero is a national database registration that you can access online. I'll just show you how it goes. Once you register it, it gives you ownership of that answer, of that question. So whoever else is trying to do a systematic review, they can go to Prospero to make sure that it's not been done, already all being done. Because you, for example, may be doing something in India and I'm doing something similar in the UK, there's no point having competing analysis being performed. So when you submit your manuscript to a high impact journal, they will actually require Prospero. And so that's quite important for you to have a Prospero ID. And when you register it, a series of questions that you have to answer, it follows the PRISMA guidelines in terms of what your outcome is, your definition, how your search strategy is being done. Basically stuff that we cover anyway, but it puts you on a paper format so that you actually have a think in terms of how you will do it. So this is the website for Prospero. You register, it's sponsored by the NIHR. So it's so every single, you can browse to see on your own free time what form of analysis is being done. And then you register it there. This is an example of what a Prospero questionnaire looks like. It's very detailed, but once you do it right the first time, it's very easy for you to do it again and again, because your search strategy for most systematic reviews is the same, your analysis is the same, and it allows you to think in terms of how your mesh term will be defined as well. This is an example of one of my Prospero registrations. So if you want this shared for you to have a look, just drop me an email. I'll share that with you. It's in the public domain anyway. So now that you've defined the question and we've got our Prospero registration, now it's about doing the actual literature search. So for that, we'll need to search databases depending on what form of studies you're trying to do. Obviously, you've got PubMed, which you guys know, you've got the Cochrane database, you've got the M-based database. And if you're looking at RCTs, then you need to look at the WHO trial registration as well. And for that, you can use different platforms. I use the Ovid platforms. And I'll go through that in a moment, how you do that. The Ovid platforms allows all the databases to be searched, and it extracts and export it in a file that can be used for you to screen your abstract in any way. The important thing for you to know when you're defining this is the mesh term. The mesh term is a bit similar to hashtags, if you want to think about it. So every paper has a series of hashtags with it. So if you're looking at a paper on trigger and in IVF, the hashtag would be trigger HCG, hashtag GnRH, hashtag live birth. That's how you think about it. And there's a framework for the mesh term, which I don't have the time frame to go through that right now, but we can have a bit more detailed discussion about this. And so let's put it in practical. So I'm trying to do a systematic review in patients having IVF. And my question is, does the use of HCG or GnRH lead to increased clinical pregnancy rates? So that's my question. And the way you go ahead with it, the way I go ahead with it, is I separate it in 3 ways. So I go one, which I define the patients, that's my IVF patients. Then intervention 1 is HCG, intervention 2 is GnRH, and the 4th question is the outcome, and that's your PICO. And that's how you do it, and that's how your mesh term will be defined as. And now you go on to OVID. This is what OVID looks like. And it's accessible through your university databases, or how you may need a personal account. But at least for me, I'm lucky enough that King's provides me with it. Most universities will have an affiliation with OVID. And this is how you start. Blank page, you don't know what to do. And then you go ahead and you start typing your keyword here, and in terms of what you want to do. And it will generate the mesh term tree analysis and tells you, for example, if you write IVF, it will tell you actually the mother mesh term is ART. So are you looking at ART or just IVF? So it allows you to define that way. If you're looking at clinical pregnancy, it will say pregnancy. Do you want everything or early pregnancy? So you have to define it that way. And this is how you get started. So for this analysis I was looking at, so I'm looking at patients with IVF. That's my first mesh term, looking at every single IVF papers out there. I'm looking at trigger HCG. I'm looking at GnRH, so that's my second trigger. And I'm looking at egg retrievals, so that's another mesh term. I'm looking at clinical pregnancy rate. So what you have right now is a total of 5 individual searches that's been performed. Now you need to combine them. And the way you combine them is using basically 2 simple words, and or, right? So I'm going to look at IVF patients and HCG or GnRH and clinical pregnancy. So you go from a 5 database results into 1. And obviously there'll be duplicates that comes into play into there. And that's how your abstract screening will be done. And once you have that results, you export it. And then you can use different screening methodology software to allow you to screen. Those are the 2 main ones that we have. If you're doing within Cochrane, then you use the Covidence app. It is expensive if you're using it as an individual. If your university provides it with you, great. But it's also got a limit in terms of how many studies you can do. So I actually use Ryan. Ryan is free of charge, which is great. And it does exactly the same job. It's available within an app as well. So you can actually just search. It's like Tinder, swipe left and right, depending on which study selection you write. If it matches, great. If it doesn't, just drop it. And this is how you do it. And so now you've gone through, you define your search question, you define your research question, you've done your search screening, and now you do the data extraction, which you use that software to do. And once you've done the data search selection, you do your extraction. The important thing is actually bias assessment. Different forms of bias assessment out there, depending on your study type, whether it's an LCT, whether it's a cohort study. Those are the different forms of bias that you do. I personally use Revman and Stata, depending on your level of statistical analysis experience that you have. And the different analysis methodologies there, you will read in papers, fixed term, random effects, whatever. That's actually dependent on the size and the variation that you have in the studies that you use. Generally, I use random effects because of the size of the LCTs. From a results point of view, it's not just about the sample size, but it's also about the heterogeneity of the assessment. So that's defined by an I2 statistics, which you'll see in a forest plot, and then you do sensitivity analysis as well. The way your results will come out will be forest plots, which you guys are familiar with, and you can use a funnel plot to assess bias, and then you can have a great assessment for your bias assessment as well. Usually your manuscript will start with figure 1, which is this, in terms of how your search strategy was done. Then you'll move on to a bias assessment, which is grade, Robbins, or whatever, and you'll get something like that, which is generated through Revman. And then you come to this, which is your forest plot, which is the results, right? So this is how the forest plot is being defined. The I2 here is define your heterogeneity, and then you can either define it as an odds ratio, random effect, whatever you want to do. And I'm just going to, this is my last slide. This is actually very important because it's not just about bias assessment, it's about integrity of your trial that you're including. And this is a thing that's coming more and more into play at the moment, because you have various LCTs out there that's actually not registered or actually of mixed integrity, which actually changes results. So when you're trying to do a systematic review, I think from now on, it's an understanding that you're doing an integrity assessment in your publication. And the track checklist is the one that I use and the one that Ben Moore published around. It looks at 19 items organized in 9 kind of in 7 themes. So about governance, the author, whether they have retracted studies, whether they're trustworthy, whether plausibility of the intervention, the time frame from registration to publication, whether dropout rates were accounted for, and whether baseline characteristics of your population was defined, and also if the outcomes fit the core outcome set as well. That's it. That's me. And I think I'm within time. And that's my email. I'm happy for you guys to email me if you've got any more questions or have a one-on-one chat. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Dr. Yusuf, that was a very nice and comprehensive and concise talk, I would say, sticking to the time. And
No worries.
I think, yes, I think we would have some queries regarding it because it went a little too fast. And probably as of now, since we are running a little short of time, we'll move to the next session.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think we'll connect one-on-one. You shared your email. I'll put it in the chat box also.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to have to leave in a bit. If I'm not there, drop me an email. We can have another chat one-on-one.
Yeah, because
All right.
of the
Thank
track,
you.
and, even I have a few questions, but yes, we'll talk about it. I would now like to call upon Professor Geddes. Sir, he's going to take over for the next session. It's an open house on good versus bad paper. Professor Geddes, sir, are you there?
Thank you, Dr. Rupali. 22 minutes to go.
Yes.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
So, Professor Geddes.
The very first thing to do is to answer the questions of the delegates. Can the delegates start asking the question?
I think we can move to the next. We don't have any questions in the chat box as of now, so we can move to starting with our presentation, where Professor Geddes is going to be moderating. Sir is next RBM Online editor, the founder editor of the journal. We have other faculty, Dr. Surveen ma'am, Senior Vice President IFS, who's also joined us just right now. And Dr. Jayant Mehta, sir, are you there? Yes, I think, and Dr. Kuldeep Jain, sir, would be there with us on this panel. Professor Geddes is going to be leading this panel, I think.
Good, thank you. I have received a question on my personal mobile telephone, and it says, why shouldn't the research fellow in the research team in an IVF clinic, why should they not do the literature search? The question is open to the panel. Yes, no, or don't know.
Sorry, can you repeat that for a second?
The question is, why should the research fellow on the research team, right? So there's a research group of 3 or 4 or 5 people. And why should they not be the one to do the literature search?
Actually, there should be the one.
Thank you very much, sir. Right. Next faculty member, opinion, please. Right. Thank you, sir. Dr. Surveen?
I agree with Yusuf.
You are very agreeable. Thank you.
Yeah, you should definitely be the one doing it.
Jayant?
I agree that is the research fellow who should be doing it.
Thank you very much. Excellent question from one of the team. There is another question that's popped up on my personal mobile telephone. Dr. Surveen, stop smiling. This is serious, right? What is the difference between a meta-analysis and a systematic review? Dr. Yusuf?
Yeah, so a systematic review is actually looking at clinical outcomes. Meta-analysis and systematic review are actually interlinked. You can't do a systematic review without a meta-analysis and vice versa. you can do a systematic review of narratives. So you're just looking at what's published out there, but with no outcome of interest. But if you're looking at an outcome of interest, then you need some quantitative analysis, and that's where the term meta-analysis comes into play.
Thank you, sir.
You
Dr.
can do
Savine?
qualitative if you want, but that's a separate
Yeah,
conversation.
thank you. Excellent comment. There's a supplementary point that's coming to you shortly, Dr. Youssef. Dr. Kuldeep, any comments?
No, I agree with Dr. Yusuf. Both are interlinked. When you talk of meta-analysis, it is the part of systemic review. The meta-analysis has to come. So both are interlinked.
Thank you, sir.
Can
Dr. Savine,
also-
Dr. Savine, you stopped smiling. What happened? Toothache?
I'm always smiling.
You weren't a few moments ago.
Oh, goodness. I was doing something else actually.
Oh, no TMI, too much information. Carry on.
So, with meta-analysis, the numbers are definitely there. You're combining the numbers, taking out an analysis. That's the crux of a meta-analysis.
Correct.
That is
Thank you. The supplementary point. Sorry, Dr. Kalpana?
You're
your
muted.
mute, Kalpana.
You're muted. You need to unmute Dr. Kalpana.
In systematic, in meta-analysis, we do with all the datas. All the datas and everything is there. So it is more of the stats, more of the numbers. But what the numbers are saying, that goes in the systematic review. So that tells what is actually these datas are saying. So that is systematic review, and meta-analysis gives
Is the
all
methodology.
the of all the stats.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Jayant has just sent me a little note on my WhatsApp, and he said, please ask the faculty,
Not to smile.
what is it? Yes, where are the onions? Yeah, where are the faculty? What is, and then we use the term literature review. So we have three terms: meta-analysis, systematic review, and literature review. So let's ask, who's that gentleman always smiling who needs a haircut? Dr. Youssef.
Well, a literature review is like a narrative review, right? It's looking at what's out there in terms of what people think, their opinion, or whatever. It's not about an intervention in the outcome of such. So a narrative review is a literature review. I can have a lit review on different drugs available for menorrhagia assessment. That's a lit review. But about whether tranexamic acid is better than something else, that's your systematic review.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from faculty?
And answer
Again,
the first
that's
question.
about numbers, and this is just a narrative of the various studies.
That's the first question, sir, which is there in the chat box. Who can write the narrative review or systematic review? So we have two questions, Professor Geddes, in the chat box. If you can.
Thank you very much. I missed that because I was having too much fun. Who should write it? As Dr. Youssef said, it should be the research fellow on the team, because that's a very, because he has told me, Dr. Youssef told me, because I listened very carefully to his very fast presentation, it's a very educational process. Any other comments from the rest of the faculty about who should write? Jayant?
No, I totally agree with you, Garis, that the systematic review can be written by the research fellow himself, because he is going to be doing the main research and looking at the systemic review to write that systemic review. So he is the person who is in charge, and he should be the one who should be delivering it. So there's no reason why he cannot write it.
Thank you. Does that answer the participant's question?
Second question is also related. Dr. Kalpana, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you.
In systematic review or meta-analysis can be written by someone who has not done the actual studies.
Yeah,
it can be written, of course, because usually it's a team, but the one driving it should be the one doing most of the work, right? The research strategy, because they
Uh,
will have a thorough
many
understanding of the
many
limitations of it.
studies are taken from the database, and then the analysis and according to the research question. So he may not be actual one of those researchers.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just sit and write a systematic review about anything like.
Okay, question to Dr. Kalpner, or comment. Very helpful. The very helpful point in your presentation was to speak is much more easy to do than to write. And what is the most difficult thing about the question from the participants is, what is the most difficult thing when writing? Single most difficult thing. Dr. Youssef, hold your fire, right? No comments from Dr. Youssef. Jayant?
The most difficult thing in writing is getting all the information together and then sort of to start writing down. Without that information.
Okay, did you see, thank you, Jayant. Did you see the signal that, Dr. Savine has gone digital on you, right? You know what that means,
1 minute.
Jayant? Absolutely wrong, right?
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Savine.
The most difficult thing is to analyze which paper is good, which is bad, which one you have to take, to sort it out and to decide which are the ones you're going to take and analyze them. That is
Did you see the look? Thank you, Dr. Savine. Did you see the look on Dr. Galpner's face, right?
It's the initial step. It's the initial step.
Right. Sorry, Dr.
The
Rupali.
initial step is the toughest. I think study question deciding is also the toughest. It's the first step.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Dr. Rupali, because I talk too much. Go ahead.
The initial step, I think, is more tough. Why? Because you're taking the first step. After that, things kind of happen.
Correct. Dr. Rupali is absolutely right. I hope you didn't tell Dr. Rupali to say that, Dr. Youssef. But Dr. Rupali and I, we have a special language when we communicate, right? And she tells me what to say, and then she is very happy. And what Dr. Rupali means is the very most difficult thing to write is the very first line, right? The first line of the first draft, right? And Dr. Savine is smiling now because she knows the next thing I'm going to say, that when I published my first paper 100 years ago, my boss sent it back to me 6 or 7 times, 7 drafts. So Dr. Rupali's opinion is absolutely right that the very first step is the most difficult one. Dr. Youssef, agree, disagree, or do you want to bite your fingernail again?
No, absolutely.
Absolutely bite your fingernail, right? Okay, just looking, where are we? So Jayant, you look anxious. You want to ask a question. We've got 11 minutes, so plenty of time. Dr. Youssef is not going for 10 and a half minutes, so go ahead, Jayant.
Wow.
I have a question for Dr. Youssef. Dr. Youssef, you presented us with the details of what is required in writing a meta-analysis and how to go about it. The question that the panel, the delegates may want to have or ask is, how do you begin of thinking what you want to write? The meta-analysis could be anything. You told us you can choose any of the topics that you want to go through. But how do you begin in deciding which is the most important topic that would be worthy of going through a meta-analysis publication?
So I would do it 2 ways. One, I'll actually have a look from a practical point of view, how many studies there are, right? So you may do a very informal kind of search and see whether there's enough for you to do a systematic review as well. If there is only 1 or 2 trials, then I wouldn't do it. For example, I'll give you an example. Cochrane approached me and was like, do a Cochrane analysis on robotic surgery in endometriosis. Sounds like a great idea, but there's only 1 trial. There's only the LaRose trial. So we said there's no point.
Okay.
So we're doing it on other forms. So you need to have a quick PubMed search on RCT, see what's out there for you to see whether it's worth pursuing or not.
Okay. Great. Sorry, Gladys.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself, Gladys.
Has Dr. Youssef answered your question, Jayant?
Yes, he has.
Good, right. Now, Dr. Kalpner wants to answer my question now. Dr. Kalpna, you
Yes.
gave some very important tricks, not tricks, tips, not tricks, tips for scientific writing, your acronyms. The one with many S's, right? Too many
Yeah.
S's, SSSS. Older colleagues than you, what's his name? Pankaj Talwar, right? Very old man. Where is he? No, he's resting. He uses ABC, accuracy, brevity, clarity, right? And these are very, very important points you raised for the new authors of the coming generation, and other acronyms as well. Thank you very much. Dr. Youssef, would you like to comment on that aspect of Dr. Kalpna's presentation?
No, I think it's quite important to have the language right, because sometimes it can make sense to an experienced audience, but to a naive audience, it actually doesn't make sense. So what actually is, when I write something, I usually send it to one of the junior fellows to read to see whether it makes sense to them.
Very good, sir. When I have difficulty in life, which is many hours in the short days I have awake, I always ask a young person, and that's precisely what you've done. Very, very good advice for in today's rapidly changing world. Jayant, I interrupted you. Comments?
No. I was just going to invite the participants if they have any more questions, because obviously they might be shying away, but let's open it up, the floor to them, and see if they have any more questions that they want to raise to all of us, to Dr. Youssef and Dr. Kalpna.
So I have a question for Dr. Yusuf.
Yes.
You're not one of the participants, Dr. Rupali. No, I have seen who's raised the hand. Dr. Indra Kartik has raised her hand. She has a question.
Yes,
She has a question. What is your question, Dr. Indra?
Please unmute her.
Maybe she's gone for a cup of coffee. Okay, Dr. Rupali, carry on.
Okay, so Dr. Yusuf, when you register your trial at your main PICO question or your trial topic at the Prospero, you might be, there must be multiple number of times, because there are a lot of systematic reviews now. If you pick up a topic, how do you really ensure that it is, one, it is not repeated, second, it will not be accepted by Prospero, because every topic there are like 100 systematic reviews now. And how have those people really got into the same topic? The same topic will have so many systematic reviews. How do you do that?
I think you'd be surprised to see a lot of people have an ideas about them, but actually it's not registered. And the way I do it sometimes is I go on it and I see if something's out there, what other variation of that question can be addressed? Because the study question is very specific, because you're only looking at certain parameters. So it's quite specific. So I've never had a problem where I've thought of something and when actually it may have been registered before, then you have an update, right? If it's just recently been done, then it can be repeated after 5-6 years, you've got more studies that's come into play. So sometimes you can see a systematic review on the same question every 5 years because there are more papers coming through. So that's completely fine. The point, you may read Prospero and then something else comes into play. You actually, that's what I was interested in. Actually, there's a variation of that that's not been done. So the more you read about it, the more your research question
Can
will
you
come
change
up.
it as you go ahead with your analysis? Can you change the
Yeah, before I do a little bit of background search and read, see what's out there. And then, usually if you look at the Cochrane stuff at the end, they'll say research question that needs to be answered. Or if you look at guidelines, for example, the LCOG green top, it will say, oh, these following questions, research questions are worth answering. So you start your thinking that way.
I want to come back to the subject of literature review. Literature review is a very, in my opinion, and I've said this many times before, and faculty knows that I have this opinion, but for our delegates, I think it is a potential valuable starting point in scientific writing, right? Because when one does a literature review, one will see the quality of the work that's been published. and most will see that it is achievable, whatever it is that a young colleague looking forward to writing scientific reports will see it is achievable. So it's a good, in my opinion, it's a good starting point. It's not as sophisticated and daunting or frightening as meta-analysis or systematic review. Comments, please, Dr. Youssef?
No, I think it's completely true. And also, if you're going to do a systematic review, your lit review is your first paragraph, right? So your first paragraph is your background. So you're going to have to do a lit review before you even do anything. So you start there, and then you get your answers, your questions generated from there.
Yeah, it's practice and rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
And you know, steps. Who said that? Dr. Kalpner said steps. Yeah, yeah.
Steps.
And Dr. Rupali, yeah, steps. Yeah, Dr. Rupali definitely agrees with steps. Yeah. Any other points? We are now coming up to 3 minutes. Dr. Youssef has already got his running shoes on. Dr. Kalpner, we cut you short. Please, what is the last sentence in your recommended paper? The last sentence.
Yes. Actually, whatever we write, it has to be very specific. Non-specific, if review of literature similarly is very important, because there are two components. One, we know what work has already been done and what is the knowledge gap. That we can know only by doing a proper review literature. And then whatever we are doing, there has to be some novelty. We have to be very specific, very smartly, very precisely. We have to write whatever, because in today's world, nobody has got time. So extra unnecessary information should be avoided. We have to be very precise, specific, and smartly written, whatever we want to communicate and whatever is the conclusion of the study. That has to be written in a very smart and precise way.
Thank you, Dr. Kalpner. You also taught me a new word. I am familiar with the word franglais, fringlish, dinglish, but not English.
Yeah. Because we Indians sometimes, there is some like, no, I would. So we sometimes inadvertently use certain words, and everybody may not be very fluent with their English. So that's why English word is there.
Well, if you are not speaking the language of your culture, then it's a challenge, a great big challenge. And can you imagine how many versions of my name there are? And the one I like best is James Bond. We have 1 minute left. Let's go through. Dr. Youssef, you can buzz off, mate. Off to the hairdresser, go to the nail salon. So, Dr. Suveen.
Hello, you muted
Sorry,
your...
Dr. Suveen, any last comment as we close up?
So there are very few meta-analysis from India. And it's basically because we, as in many Indians, do not research. So what I feel is that we need a guide who would help us to go through with a meta-analysis. And I wanted to ask Yusuf whether he would help in that. If
Yeah,
any...
of course. We've had this
Yes,
chat
you
before.
see, Dr. Youssef has told me, how long will it take for Dr. Suveen to ask me? It took Dr. Suveen exactly 57 minutes and 30 seconds. Dr. Youssef, go away. Dr. Suveen is going to send you your orders, and you will stand at attention.
But obviously, drop me an email, and then we can work something.
No, we'll send the Albanians around, mate. You'll have to sign it, hard copy. Time to round up because I've been fussy about timekeeping. Faculty has found this very valuable. Faculty, wave goodbye to everybody. I hope that our delegates have also enjoyed it. Dr. Kalpner, excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yusuf, buzz off. You shouldn't be here. You're late.
Bye.
You're 1 minute late.
Manshu, can you display the poster? All right. Great thank you to all. It was actually quite an enlightening session. Dr. Kalpana, your presentation was also very nice, to the point, and very well pointed that yes, even the tenses have to be correct, because we are there in the editorial board and we see there's so many papers where where basic grammatical errors would be there, which kind of put off the reviewers, and it is kind of tough to deal with them. These are very, very simple points which you put forward, but they are very important, that the paper should be grammatically correct. The discussions should be relevant to the study questions. Sometimes they just go off board and just
Many times the conclusion is entirely different from the discussion. All
absolutely.
the students do all the everything and then conclusion is something else.
So
So
yeah.
this becomes very important for the students.
Very nicely pointed and very nicely presented, I must say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Dr. Yusuf, your presentation actually is, I think, really needed. Maybe we'll contact you again also for one more. We are planning to do this activity with all the chapters
One thing,
once a month. So, so let's see wherever we can kind of catch hold of you again.
Yeah, no problem. You've got my number. So just text me. We'll organize something.
Yes, we'll definitely call you again for a talk,
No
because
worries.
I think lots of people
It's
are
artificial intelligence. Dr. Yusuf has gone.
one thing I would like to say, 15 minutes is not sufficient for discussing meta-analysis and systematic.
I know, it's short. It's short. It takes
has
me
to be
months to do
minimum
this.
half an hour to 1 hour. Then only whatever he has said can be actually genuinely learned by the audience and by anyone, because it was very precise and very like very compact. So only those who have got some background, some knowledge, then only they can analyze and understand. For a viewer, newer person, I think it should be minimum
Yes,
high.
that's overwhelming
but
to hear
this
all
was the
this.
first
Yeah.
one, and being online, it is usually difficult to keep everybody tied to the screens for more than 1.5 hours. That's what our experience has been. That's why we kept it short. Maybe we'll try to keep it relatively
Well,
longer.
is the learning point from that, and I think Dr. Kalpana's raised a very, very important point, is the learning point from that those delegates who have registered should receive, with all the NDAs, right, a copy of the presentation with all the important details that was in the slides you shared with us beforehand, so that when we come to question and answer with the participants, the delegates, right, then they are specific and they've had a chance to look at this, right? And then they may not feel quite so, what's the word, overloaded.
Yeah.
Overloaded, because it's important to get the message, but it's important for the message, to be able to ask the questions is also important. So preamble and present, and it's done occasionally by some colleagues. Not everybody likes to do it, but for complicated subjects, it may be worth considering. 4 minutes over time. You're late.
I'm gonna have to go. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Got to get the next bus, Yusuf.
Text me. We'll do something.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Closing up, Dr. Rupali.
Yes.
I will like to thank Dr. Yusuf for his presence. I think this is a very good beginning, and I must congratulate Dr. Rupali for persisting to organize this program. So thank you, Rupali. And of course, thank you, Professor Geddes,
Kalpana,
for your valuable inputs, I
And
must say.
Thank you, Dr. Kuldeep. Don't forget Dr. Jayant Mehta, who changed the background. He's
He is
patient
always
with
there.
Parkinson's
So,
disease.
and of course, I again thank Dr. Kalpana for initiating this program.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
I am sure that other chapters are going to take up it with interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just say one thing here, if I
Yes,
may,
sir.
with the permission of the chair. Will these presentations be available to the delegates who joined us today on the IFS website?
yes.
we can get the recording.
Yes. There is a recording, and they will also be put up on the YouTube channel of the Indian Fertility
Perfect.
Society.
Perfect.
So
Good.
everything will be there. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Yes.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Yes,
you.
bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.